What is a houseware?
Pat GPT does not know the answer to said question. Try again.
A dress. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Brand Coverage, a mostly fantasy football podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Carney, alongside Pat Gustafson, who is faceless today as he comes to us broadcasting from the dark depths of his mom's basement, aka I think it's just his bedroom, and it's nice and dark there. We've got a good show for you guys today. We've got some preseason week 1 takeaways. We've got our sleepers draft. We've got some injuries to talk about. Poor old Matthew Stafford. Who knows what the fuck's going on with him. And again, for those of you watching live or after the fact here on YouTube, I got a new background. I am officially set up here in the wonderful state of Connecticut now. I hope you guys enjoy the cardboard box of ambiance over my right shoulder over here. That will not be there forever unless I decide to keep it there. But we're getting there. We're taking steps. I hope you like my sound panel hexagons over here as well. So it's all coming together.
I was going to say, you just look, this nice bright setting, and I'm just literally a circle.
Yeah, well, so
I am nothing right now.
Here's the thing. I got very lucky because, honestly, I didn't take inventory of where any of the lights were in here before settling on where my desk would be. And, I mean, it kind of had to be here anyway. But if there was a light, like, directly above my head, this would look fucking awful. But there's just not. So it's perfectly spaced out. I no longer have to worry about the time of day. So when we are, podcasting in the middle of November and it gets dark at fucking 5 o'clock, we'll be all good over here.
That's why my setting in my bedroom, I had to pick the one specific spot where there would not be.
Yeah. Alex in our chat just said. Terrible. Alex just said, have you worn anything besides Yukon merch since you moved back? I barely wore anything other than Yukon merch anyway, so no. Hey, we've got a few things to get out of the way before we get to our main show. Pat, I will let you take the reins on that. Go on ahead.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that know, we are running as we like to call it, a Brandpire League. And, we are drafting a week from tomorrow and that. So I was going to record a video making the draft picks known, but I'm like, we have a podcast. Fuck it, we'll do it live. So I'm going to pick these names. So, for those of you, do you see me? Oh, you can see me. I don't want to be seen. For those of you who know, so you'll now know who's playing. The first name I pick will be picking 9th in the draft, and so on and so forth, until there's one name left. So, picking 9th in the draft is... Oh, I feel bad. Eliza's in the chat right now. Eliza.
Sorry, Eliza.
S. Okay.
Someone said Pat's audio sounds like a national disaster press conference.
Ladies and gentlemen...
Please evacuate your homes.
Number 8 pick. Puka Glazer. Sorry, Puka Glazer.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you'll be picking Puka with some recent events that we'll talk about.
I was going to say, Puka will at least be available. It's up to you if you're going to select them there.
We might be able to get him with the 7th pick in the draft.
Fuck.
Jared F. Hi, Lexi.
Pat says hi.
All right, now 6th pick. Here we go. Ben J. gets the 6th pick. He used his dad joke. That was kind of what got him in the league.
It was pretty much what got him in the league, yeah.
The edging joke. 5th pick here, longtime listener here, Lily O. Lily, if you're here, jump on in.
Congratulations.
With the 4th pick in the draft, it is Pat Lover 69, a.k.a. Matt H., who wrote the love letter that got him in the league. All right, we're down to 3 people. We're down to 3 people, including someone in the chat right now. I jinxed it, Alex. You have the 3rd pick.
Poor Alex.
Sorry, Alex.
You can take T. Higgins or Chase Brown.
Off the top of my head, I believe that leaves us with Ren YK and I'm not being very good at my job right now. Nate Jablonski, a big fan of the podcast. So now I'm going to pick the 1st pick here. So these two will have, whoever picked will have the 1st pick. With the 1st pick, which is fitting because he's one of our OGs, Ren YK. The 1st pick in the draft
Your Jamar Chase or Bijan Robinson
meaning
to
Nate
both
J
of these folks.
will pick second. All right, folks, that's my time. I'm going back off camera and shutting the light off in my bedroom.
Congratulations, everybody who is in the Brandpire Vampire League. Again, we'll be keeping you guys updated on this league all year long, even if you're not in it, I think you will catch some interest. You'll have some interest just in the format of this league and whether Pat and I's undrafted free agent squad can siphon off any wins here, because we plan to. But let's get into the news of the week.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
A couple football-related things to get off first, then I'll let Pat go on a little monologue here for a sec. But I just want to say this is very funny that there were two, well, one was a transaction, one was an almost transaction. The Bears worked out Jamal Williams this week. The Dolphins also did. It seems like the Dolphins settled on some other guys to sign instead of Jamal Williams. But I just wanted to point this out because of how much I have shit on DeAndre Swift on this podcast, largely off of the premise, and I brought up the stat multiple times, that, Swift, when he was with Ben Johnson in Detroit, Ben Johnson wanted to give anybody other than Swift carries to the point where he gave Jamal Williams 262 of them. So if the Bears, look, Jamal Williams is still unsigned. The Bears, to my knowledge, did not sign another depth running back. Obviously, they were apparently looking for one here. If they do sign Jamal Williams, and we run this back this year with a now, I think, 30 or 31-year-old Jamal Williams, and he out-carries or takes DeAndre Swift's job, I am going to laugh my fucking ass off. So I just wanted to point out that that workout happened, and I am still holding out hope that Jamal Williams will, in fact, be a Chicago Bear and cuck DeAndre Swift once again. In that same note, this one actually did happen, but I think Pat jokingly called out that the 49ers should sign Jeff Wilson. Pat, I don't remember what this was in relation to. Was this in relation to the fact that the 49ers running backs have all gotten hurt and that you were like, they should sign Jeff Wilson, bring back an old friend, sarcastically, mostly, and then they fucking did it. So Jeff Wilson is the San Francisco 49ers.
I think we were talking about Isaac Guerendo's injury, and then pretty much about how, or it might have been about how Mike McDaniel makes any running back work like he did with Jeff Wilson, but regardless of what I said, I just predicted Jeff Wilson going back there. That's not the second thing I've predicted in a few weeks. This one's much better than me predicting Quinshon Judkins being a domestic abuser. What bold nonsense thing can I say today that actually happens? Stay tuned.
Say something about Bayshall Tootin later. Other piece of news. James Cook has returned from his hold-in and is practicing again. Don't really know what he's doing. Don't really know what his plan is. He showed up to camp and practiced to start out, and then he decided he was holding in, and now he's decided he's no longer holding in and he's participating again. I'm not sure if he knows what he's doing at this point. All he knows is he wants a contract. I'm not sure he knows the best way to go about that, because if these are leverage plays, he's being weird about it. I can't really pinpoint the direction he's trying to take with all this, but either way, back on the practice field, back on the fantasy menu if you are a more risk-averse person, or at least he's on the menu for now until he decides he's holding in or holding out again, or holding upside down. Good to see that he's on the practice field, though, because any of these guys that miss these reps, you worry about them whether they're veterans or not.
It sort of just reminds me of that Family Guy episode where Peter gets liposuction and they're trying to get into the Handsome People Club. And they don't let Chris in, and he goes, well, if he can't come in, then I'll just come in. Just absolutely folding. You won't pay me what I want? Fine. I'll just come and play on my current salary.
Fine. I'll just show you guys that you don't really need me, because Ray Davis is probably maybe just as good. I don't actually believe that, but I do think Ray Davis would be good given that opportunity. Yes, James Cook is back. Pat, would you like to go over some quick non-NFL thing before we dive into everything here?
You know what's funny? I feel like one of my more notable soliloquies on this podcast was about the infamous Angel Hernandez. As we all know, if I was a Glazer, I would be MLB umpire Glazer 69. And something very significant happened this past weekend in the sense that Jen Powell became the first woman to ever umpire a Major League Baseball game, both on the bases and then behind the plate on Sunday. Incredibly unfortunate that the first pitch she ever was 3 inches off the plate.
I know.
Was not egregious, but not a strike. But as soon as I saw that, I'm just like, of course, they're gonna run this into the goddamn ground. But I believe her percentage was right under league average. Not a great game, not a terrible one. But this is very significant, and especially considering the fact that there's a lot of old fucks that are umpiring, and potentially a new collective bargaining agreement, which could lead to a mass retirement in the next year or two. So don't be surprised if you see Jen Powell a lot more, and potentially on the full-time staff. And it's insane to me, the barbaric takes, where it's like, oh, she's a woman, she has no place in Major League Baseball, yada. None of these umpires play Major League Baseball. Some of them may never have even played high school baseball.
Half these umpires look like they need assistance getting out of bed in the morning, so I don't really think it matters.
You don't need to have the practical experience to know the game of baseball, to know the rules of baseball, to have the demeanor to officiate a game of baseball. Because it's not easy. You see these guys and now gals get screamed at on a regular basis by these angry, hulking men who could probably take them down in one swing. So, great to see. Looking forward to seeing her more this year. Baseball is for everyone, people. Baseball is the greatest, and this is why.
Couldn't agree more. Well, can't agree with baseball being the greatest, but baseball is still great. I'm still glad it's around and exists. All right, we are going to get into some injury updates, then preseason takeaways, and then Pat and I will reveal some of our favorite sleepers for this year. But first things first, Pat, haven't hit this one in a while, but we've got some injuries to talk about.
Ouch.
Matthew Stafford is considered week to week with a herniated disc. Pat is just always the same. The Stafford stuff has just gotten more and more concerning as time has gone on, mostly because of these, timelines that Sean McVay and the Rams are putting on things, and then Stafford keeps not meeting these timelines. He was supposed to practice yesterday in individual drills. He did not. He instead spent his practice time inside this giant metal trailer-looking thing that was apparently some sort of treatment, I don't even know, device. And the only positive thing we've heard about Matthew Stafford over the last few weeks is that he apparently had a throwing session over the weekend where he threw like 60 some odd passes, and he looked fantastic. But Pat, of course, he looked fantastic behind the most closed doors you could possibly have right now. I'm not sure how to approach this. I mean, I am sure how to approach this. How you approach this from a fantasy perspective is don't have your draft for another 3 weeks like Pat and I do. Labor Day weekend is the best time to draft because, teams just can't hide stuff as well at that point. I mean, I guess the 49ers hid stuff with Christian McCaffrey, but you're more likely to know exactly what's going on, especially if it is a serious, possibly season jeopardizing thing, or at least a few week jeopardizing thing with Matthew Stafford. Is it time to panic on Rams receivers and the Rams offense as a whole? I'm a little nervous for sure, and I mean, I know not all of you out there can control your draft dates or times. I'm sure some of you are drafting here, anytime from now over the next few weeks. And so if you are approaching your draft here in the next few days, let's say there's no meaningful update on Matthew Stafford, or let's say your draft is right now, I would be hesitant to draft the likes of Puka Ngata and Devontae Adams and even Kyron Williams, Pat. I don't know how you feel about their risk factor here.
Well, unfortunately, I did have a draft Sunday. A little dubious in the sense that there were keepers and like a few extra flexes, so not your typical draft, but I had the 7th pick, and there I was faced with the best wide receiver available being Puka, and the best running back available being Derrick Henry. And, going into it, I would rank Puka over Derrick Henry 9 times out of 10 before this. But with this, I went with the guarantee. Derrick Henry is going to be that guy in Baltimore's backfield, and Puka, he could still be very good with Jimmy G under center, but we know he's going to be great with Matthew Stafford, and we don't know what he's going to be with Jimmy G. So I did actually pick Derrick Henry in that spot. And, if Stafford's healthy in a few weeks, I may look like an idiot, but that's okay, because right now I would much rather do that than have effectively Tyreek Hill from last season potentially in my lineup there. I don't think it would be that bad, but still, just at the 7th overall pick there, the risk is not worth it for me right now.
Yeah, I think, first round, Puka Ngata definitely becomes a little dicey right now. I do think there's certainly an opportunity to be had if you find him falling to the 2nd round in your drafts, which he does seem to be falling to in, mock drafts right now because of just the uncertainty. Because after thinking about it, Pat, like, is it scary to draft Puka? Let's say Stafford gets ruled out for the season. Let's go to the absolute worst case scenario. Is it scary to draft Puka Ngata in that case? Absolutely. However, Jimmy G is a guy who, he would be the one that steps in this case, we believe. Jimmy G is a guy, Pat, that bamboozled certain folks, into thinking he was a top 10, even top 5 borderline caliber quarterback during his time with the 49ers, strictly because he won so many games and was able to, operate that system so well. He's now on a team with probably the second most potent system for quarterback, maybe, a toss-up with the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell, but certainly one of the most potent systems for a quarterback. I'm not expecting Jimmy G to light the world on fire, but I am expecting him to look better than he did with the Raiders and arguably the worst, sort of coaching and supporting cast he could have had. So I'm like, part of me is like, I still don't think, even if Stafford got ruled out for the year today, like Puka is a guy that I would still be pretty comfortable taking in the second round at least. But that is pretty much the extent of where I would take him. It is still a dicey thing, especially with Devontae Adams in the picture, a guy that Jimmy, for better or for worse, does have history with, maybe some comfortability with. But at the end of the day, Puka's a really good player and has a really good offensive head coach in Sean McVay, and I just don't see a way where he like completely bottoms out. But it is a little bit scary right now just because you are not getting that top end upside that you thought you might be getting with Puka Ngata, especially if you've already drafted.
And that's the thing, I've said it so many times, that this is one of the best first 2 rounds that I've seen in a long time, fantasy-wise. So the fact that back end of the first round is so loaded with the likes of, Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, I'm forgetting several names right now, but with the likes of that, it's easier to kind of fade him a little bit. I'm not fading him very far, but it's just the fact that those guys also have really good situations that I really like and not the red flag like that made it easier to pass on him in that moment.
Yeah, so we will obviously keep you guys updated on the latest on Matthew Stafford as we find it out. As of now, we went over worst case scenario. As of now, we do not believe there's a reason to believe that he would be actually out for the year. Kind of just something we're monitoring. Hopefully he ends up back on the practice field here in the next few weeks. But it is scary. It's a guy that's had back issues before. It's a guy that's older. So it's definitely something we got to watch here. Somebody who is done for the year, Pat, Rashawn Slater. And this one sucks because the Chargers, I feel like, just can never catch a break. And it's happened again. Their star left tackle done for the season. Not a death sentence to the Chargers by any means. They're just moving Joe Alt over from the right side to the left side to replace Slater, and then I believe they're moving Trey Pipkins over to right tackle. Yes, Trey Pipkins. I had that right. Over to right tackle. So it's certainly a big hit to the O-line. I think the O-line's still pretty well above average, but it does dampen the prospects of a guy like Omarion Hampton, who so much of his appeal is, we don't know exactly what he is as an NFL player yet, but we know he's on a team that really wants to run the ball and has the assets, in terms of O-line, to run the ball. Now, that just becomes less of an ideal situation, and Omarion Hampton, at least in my mind, becomes a little bit less of a slam dunk sort of pick.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of unfortunate here with how big of a fixture Rashawn Slater has been when he's on the field for them. And especially in this Greg Roman, Jim Harbaugh style offense. Again, I think with the system and their mentality, it'll still hurt because he's an elite left tackle, but they're still going to be prepared to go for a situation like this. I'm not necessarily fading anyone in this Chargers thing. I'm more concerned, that Greg Roman said that in Najee Harris, Captain Najee Harris is not ready for week 1. That Omarion Hampton will be splitting with another back. Who, he said, and who knows. First of all, I don't fucking buy it. Yes, I think Hassan Haskins will probably be on the field. Will it be to the extent Najee Harris would have been? I don't buy it. I simply do not buy it. They don't have a running back on that team outside of Hampton with the caliber that Najee Harris does to warrant that big of the playing time. And we don't even know what kind of playing time Najee would have necessarily gotten.
To me, I'm not looking at that quote as anything more than stating the obvious of Omarion Hampton's not going to get literally every touch out of the backfield, which maybe that was just Greg Roman pushing back on, a perception that would be the case, even though I would hope everybody was exaggerating if they think Omarion Hampton's going to get 100% of the touches out of that backfield, because that doesn't happen for anybody. So that's really all I see there. It's Omarion Hampton. I don't think... It's a guy they spent a first-round pick on. I don't think they're going to meaningfully mix in as much as I'd like them to. My boy Kamani Vidal or Hassan Haskins or Naheem. What did he changed his last name? Naheem Hines. Naheem Hines Smith. Hines
Ketchup.
Naheem Miller Hines. Naheem Miller highlights.
Sounds like a beer.
Exactly. Look, maybe they mix him in. I don't know. But I'm not. I don't really care about that quote. The Rashawn Slater thing, though, does suck, and I am sorry to the Chargers fans. Sticking with the O-line, Pat, we had a scare today. Landon Dickerson, the Eagles' star guard, has a meniscus injury, but it does appear that he is on track, or at least, potentially going to be ready for week 1. This would have been a pretty big loss for them if he did go down after already losing Mekhi Becton this offseason, so that O-line depth would have been tested if they were going to miss Dickerson for a long period of time, but sounds like he's going to be all right. Eagles dodged a bullet there. Matt LaFleur is hopeful that Jaden Reed can be ready for week 1. He's dealing with a sprained foot, which is a different injury than what he opened up camp with, so... I don't know, man. Jaden Reed, this guy, he's becoming one of these guys that it's like, I keep wanting more from you and not getting it. And I just worry that, especially now that they've drafted another receiver to try to, fix some of these problems, and we're hearing all this hype about Tucker Kraft and whatever, I worry that Jaden Reed's just never going to quite get there to the degree that we've seen in some of his blow-up games. I feel like we've been hoping he can make that a more consistently occurring thing, and it just hasn't happened. So, Jaden Reed is another injury to watch here.
This is only going to dampen an already very complicated passing game situation in Green Bay. So, I wasn't necessarily planning on drafting a whole lot of Jaden Reed. I almost said Jaden Green, whoever the fuck that is.
Jalen Green.
Reed, but I certainly will not be drafting him.
Yeah, I think that is fair. Anthony Richardson dislocated his pinky, considered day-to-day. I jokingly said maybe this will make him better. Still, Pat, I don't know. You put Daniel Jones' upper hand in the quarterback battle. I really haven't gauged who has the edge here, with health permitting, of course. It's so gross that I almost don't care. It does make a difference. They're slightly different quarterbacks. I think Daniel Jones is a little bit more capable in the short to intermediate areas of the field throwing the ball. Not that he's great as a passer either.
That's crazy. That's true too.
I know.
That's just a crazy statement, but not a wrong one.
Like if you're like a Josh Downs or a Tyler Warren investor, I think you are hoping Daniel Jones is the guy. But at this point, if you are a Josh Downs or Tyler Warren investor and you are banking your chips on Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, you are probably a very, very depressed individual at this point. So, kind of just gross either way. I don't know. Somebody's going to be out there starting for the Colts week 1, and then the Colts are going to go 4-13, and that's going to be the end of it.
And my question is just because we've talked about, Justin Fields, obviously a bit more talented than these guys. Does the rushing upside of either of these guys make them a late dart throw? I think no. Even with the rushing upside, I don't think that makes up for the lack of, production in the passing game. But I don't know, maybe you feel differently.
No, I feel like, look, we've seen with what Daniel Jones is, right? Like, we know he has some rushing upside there, but Daniel Jones has never been able to put together a full season of, like, I'm happy with this production where it would warrant actually drafting him. Anthony Richardson, maybe it's just because I can't get it out of my head, the potential that we thought he had coming out and that we saw glimpses of, in between injuries. Anthony Richardson is the only one that I think would have a path to consistent fantasy relevance if he could just learn how to play quarterback a little bit better. But we just don't really have any good reason to believe that he's going to do that. I think both these guys are going to go undrafted, rightfully so. And you can maybe just get a couple games out of him here or there. Anthony Richardson would also just be such a frustrating guy to watch because we've talked about this before, Pat, where sometimes these guys with the rushing upside come along and obviously they're so bad as an actual quarterback that you're just fearing every single week that this guy could literally get benched at halftime, even though they might have been putting up decent fantasy stats up to that point because they're moving it with their legs, but every time they throw the ball, it's a pick or it's the worst throw you've ever seen in your life. So it just doesn't feel good to me either way with either of these guys. Justin Jefferson, mild hamstring strain. Videos of him, he seems to be moving pretty well. Not something I'm particularly worried about. Still a very locked and loaded early first-round pick. Rachaad White, groin injury. This one does sound like it could be not overly serious, but something that could certainly linger into week one.
Tricky, man.
Yeah, two takeaways from this, Pat. First, in Bucky, we sucky. Bucky Irving is as much on the menu as he ever has been, with Rachaad White possibly out of the picture. And Sean Tucker also possibly back in the menu. Now, these takeaways are also twofold. I think if Rachaad White is going to miss time, this is a undeniable positive for Bucky Irving in the sense that even if Sean Tucker gets maybe a little more work, Sean Tucker is not this like incredibly good receiving back like what Rachaad White. That's Rachaad White's skills, that he's a very good receiving back. He's going to take some of that work from Bucky Irving. He did it all throughout last year. He did it to the point where he somehow finished the year as an RB2, even though it was, kind of a tale of two halves of the season for him. But he still managed to be productive enough to finish there by the end of the year. If he's out, I think Bucky Irving is going to get a lot of that, and then Sean Tucker might just fill in the gaps with some more of those carries that maybe Bucky isn't getting. But either way, I really like both backs. I am a long-time Sean Tucker truther. I mean, I am the OG with Sean Tucker. All they need to do is add Zach Evans to this backfield, and I will be absolutely living my life. Zach Evans probably. I don't know.
I thought he retired this week. That's kind of funny.
He probably did. I mean, he's only like 24, but he probably did.
It's interesting because I think this could be potentially really big for Bucky Irving, even if Rachaad White only misses 1 or 2 weeks. That just gives an opportunity for Bucky to show what he can do with a really big workload. And they say, hey, maybe we don't need to work in Rachaad White as much. He's still going to be around no matter what, but maybe it doesn't need to be as significant. Maybe Bucky can prove himself in the passing game, like you said. I don't necessarily think I would draft Sean Tucker. He certainly will be involved. I think that's more of a reflection on the fact that, they do have someone there capable enough that Bucky's not going to get the Saquon, Kyron Williams workload, even if Rachaad White is out. And famously, these two I confused last year, Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving. I thought Bucky was the big motherfucker, and Tucker was the speed guy. I don't know what happened there. Turns out Bucky is like a Kleenex, and Sean Tucker is a Brinks truck.
In Bucky and Tucky, we sucky.
And two things get yucky.
Tyjae Spears suffered a high ankle sprain. I mean, this guy can just never stay healthy. It seemed like in that first preseason game, Pat, we were actually going to get a real split between these two, which is something I always assumed would happen because I still believe in Tyjae Spears' talent. And I believe that if they were both healthy going into the year, we would get a real split. There were some people out there that just, thought this would be Tony Pollard 1, Tyjae 2. They're like, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, it was happening. But the poor guy can't stay healthy. And I'll say this, Pat, this has almost single-handedly shifted my outlook on Tony Pollard. I was pretty uninspired by him. And I mean, look, he's still not my favorite pick to make in a fantasy draft. But when you look at now him being essentially alone in the backfield, I believe it's Khalil Mullings who's going to step in, 6th-round rookie, as the theoretical backup to Tony Pollard. I think Tony Pollard's going to get a lot of work, again, in an offense that is very capable of taking a big step forward and possibly putting Pollard. I mean, I'm not even going to say possibly. Cam Ward is going to put Tony Pollard into more scoring opportunities than Will Levis and Mason Rudolph did. How many more? How many more? I'm not sure. But Tony Pollard was like a very serviceable, productive back most of last season. Tyjae Spears had that really hot end of year, like during the fantasy playoffs where he scored a bajillion touchdowns. But Tony Pollard was really good last year, and his situation has only improved now with Tyjae Spears out of the picture, at least in the start of the season. So I'm very much interested in Tony Pollard as just one of those rock solid sort of guys that you can plug into your lineup for, I would say, probably at least the first month of the season, if not longer. Because even when Spears gets back, if this Titans offense hits the sort of ceiling that I think is possible for them, and it doesn't even need to be a super high ceiling, they just need to be like a middle of the road offense, I think Tony Pollard can be really productive again.
Yeah, it was interesting because of Spears' injuries and other things. Pollard was kind of the guy there last year when we thought it was going to be a pretty good split, but that kind of just didn't end up happening. Yet we go into this offseason thinking like, oh yeah, it's same thing again. We're going to think that Spears is going to cut into it. And Pollard was nothing more than a guy I reluctantly take when I take 4 receivers in the first 4 rounds.
Right.
But now he
feels better.
Much better. Much better. He, again, like you said, Cam Ward should be an improvement. Again, it's not difficult to be an improvement. And Pollard was still pretty productive in said Will Levis, Mason Rudolph offense. The team that had the number 1 overall pick, they were bad enough, but Tony Pollard was still serviceable enough fantasy-wise. Things can only get better here for him in this situation. And again, when Spears is healthy, he'll play. He'll play, but similarly to Bucky, Pollard can prove, like, hey, I should be the guy in this offense. We've seen him be a very productive pass catcher in his Dallas days. So yeah, Tony Pollard is definitely more in the front of my mind going into draft season here.
I was trying to think of a rhyme for Tony Pollard, like how we have in Bucky we sucky. Let me run this one by.
In Pollard we collared.
In Pollard or in Tony Pollard, I'm hot and bothered. Is that close enough?
In Tony we bony. I think that might be a little better.
Okay, I'm good with that. Brandon Ayuk could return by week 6. That is the latest update on him from the 49ers. Yeah, I mean, very much. Well, not a who cares in terms of the other guys that you should be firmly now targeting if you weren't already. I think Ricky Pearsall is the easiest smash draft of the 49ers receiver room, with Juwan Jennings still out with that injury and holdout, and maybe the holdout is the injury. Who the fuck knows? But Ricky Pearsall... Ricky Pearsall is the only receiver seemingly in the state of California, at least in the city of San Francisco, that's not upset or hurt. So I think he's a very easy pick. Niners have a really easy schedule this year. They are projected to get largely back to the sort of 49ers that we know. So yeah, Ricky Pearsall, very easy one for me if Brandon Ayuk is going to miss at least 6 weeks, 5 weeks.
Honestly, the 6 weeks was actually a bit of a pleasant surprise. And like you're saying, like, okay, now we know for sure. I think we all kind of knew. It was just like, how long could it have been? The fact that they're targeting week 6 is actually a bit of a boon in Brandon Ayuk's stock here, but I'm still staying away just from the perspective that there will be Ricky Pearsall. There will, in theory, be Juwan Jennings. Christian McCaffrey's going to catch a ton of passes. George Kittle is still one of the best tight ends in the game. With all the stuff, with all the other players they have there, they don't need to bring Ayuk back in full force when he comes back. There's a chance he's just kind of a complimentary piece on that offense, in the first few weeks. So you're looking at a guy who's going to miss 6 weeks, and then who knows how long it takes him to be incorporated back into things. I'll let my league mates take Brandon Ayuk unless it is very late and your league has an IR spot.
Yeah, I think IR spot, fine. I mean, our league, Pat, actually does have an IR spot as of last year. So, I mean, you could easily house Brandon Ayuk if you have that. If otherwise, yeah, I would not waste a bench spot on a guy who may not be providing meaningful numbers for you. I mean, possibly at all, but at the very least, I would think at the very best, by week 8 or 9, you might have to wait for Brandon Ayuk to give you anything meaningful. So if you can roster him for free and throw him in a slot that doesn't really count, sure. Otherwise, I'm staying away. I mentioned before how Jamal Williams worked out for not only the Bears, but also the Dolphins. The reason he worked out for the Dolphins was because Alexander Mattison, done for the season with a neck injury, suffered in their preseason game. Scary looking injury. Glad he's all right, but... It's honestly unfortunate, Pat. The reports were that he was looking pretty good in camp, and the Dolphins need as much help as they can get in that backfield because Devon Achane is kind of his own thing. He's this super weapon, pass catcher, small little speedy freak. But they're looking for just anybody that can run the ball between the tackles and generate some sort of push behind that god-awful O-line. It seemed like maybe Madison could be in line for at least a few touches, but not to be. He's done for the year. The Dolphins signed depth pieces Mike Boone and Aaron Shamplin So the true sickos out there will be familiar with those names, but not everybody
Remember
else.
a few years ago when Mike Boone started for the Vikings? And
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
absolute fuck all.
Yeah,
Like,
Mike, he was
wasn't
waiver wire god because he was supposed to be their
wasn't
starter.
the starter. I forget who actually did start.
No,
that
I thought he did start, but he was just hot ass. I thought that was what it was.
I know he did nothing either way, and I
Yeah.
started him in a very important league and was very mad about it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
no, he was
again,
supposed to do stuff.
this is good for Jalen Wright, especially now that Jeff Wilson is unavailable to be picked up. That could have also been another easy route for them to go had they needed someone.
Yeah, true.
Again, the question is Jalen Wright going to be able to be this guy in between the tackles in the role that, or shorter yard situations, that role that Madison might have filled, and the role that I almost called him Raheem Morris, God, I am cooked. Raheem Mostert filled. So this is a good opportunity for him. Like I said, I drafted him in my Dynasty League last year, and I'm very happy that I have him. I think the potential's still there.
Well, and I will say, I think this is also a very good thing for Ollie Gordon, their 6th-round rookie that they drafted out of Oklahoma State. Probably a bit more built for that power role than a guy like Jalen Wright is. Jalen Wright, again, granted, a lot of this was on the O-line, but got stuffed at the goal line, I think, 3 straight times in that Dolphins preseason game. Ollie Gordon, played later on in that game, but he did manage to find the end zone and is just a bigger guy. Ollie Gordon's a guy, Pat, that was very much on like high-end draft radars 2 years ago. He was in like the Heisman race with how productive he was as a running back, and then he just had a down season in 2024, so that kind of nicked his draft stock a little bit. But he's a guy that, especially with Madison out of the way now, I would not be surprised to see carve out a complimentary role in this backfield. And if Jalen Wright really proves to just not be that guy, like Ollie Gordon could be very fantasy relevant. I'm not saying to draft him. I think there's too many things that would have to go right for Ollie Gordon. Honestly, for a Dolphins running back that's not Devon Achane to be fantasy relevant over the course of a full season, but definitely a name to know to keep an eye on.
It will be peculiar if it finds out that Jalen Wright is just Devon Achane, and it's like, why did you use that kind of draft pick on something you literally already had? Like, Devon Achane could be anything. The mystery box would be anything. It could even be Devon Achane.
Right.
God.
All right. Preseason week 1 takeaways, Pat.
Well, Squidward, what have we learned today?
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm hitting all the sound effects today.
Hell yeah.
This is what we've learned from preseason week 1. Now, I will give my annual disclaimer about the preseason. Do not overreact to stat lines. Do not overreact to things that don't matter. What really matters in the preseason, and really the only thing that matters, is playing time. The preseason, whether coaches, want to do this or not, they probably don't. Eventually, coaches will have to tip their hand a little bit of who is actually going to play football for them when things count. So what we look at during the preseason is who is playing with the first team, who's playing with the starters, how much are they playing with the starters, and that's really the extent of our takeaways. Some interesting things from this preseason, so let's just go down the list here. And first of all, shout out to Nate Yankee of PFF, who keeps track of all the snaps and all the things that really matter in these games as far as playing with the starters is concerned. He does a great job tracking all this stuff. First thing here, Pat, Samaje Perine mixes in as the Bengals' 3rd down back. This is something that I wanted to shove deep down in the recesses of my brain when I saw that Samaje Perine signed with the Bengals. But I knew I shouldn't have. And look, yes, Samaje Perine he's I think 30 or 31 years old. Yes, Samaje Perine is not very good. He's not very explosive. But Samaje Perine is a guy that has made a career out of playing on these passing downs, specifically on the Cincinnati Bengals. So the fact that they brought him back, I don't think anybody should be surprised that we're seeing Samaje Perine on the field and that we're going to see Samaje Perine on the field in real NFL games that count. Obviously, all anybody cares about when it comes to this is how does this affect Chase Brown and what does this mean for Chase Brown? I don't think it means a whole hell of a lot. And this is coming from a guy that is, took a long time to get on the Chase Brown train. At the end of the day, Pat, Chase Brown, if we honestly thought that Chase Brown was going to get every down work and that nobody was ever going to mix in on 3rd downs and nobody was ever going to take some passing game work away from him, he'd be a 1st-round pick, easily. I think he already had this sort of possibility baked into his ADP, and I'm not saying Samaje Perine is going to take a ton of work from the guy. I think where you're really going to maybe feel it is if they do work Samaje Perine in that 2-minute drill. Because those can be some really high value touches. Those can be an easy way to just rack up some receptions. I think that would be a little annoying for Chase Brown owners. But with how much they've talked up Brown, with how good I think Brown is, and with how just not as good I think Samaje Perine is, even though he's going to be on the field, I'm not overly worried. It's a little annoying because you feel like, just keep your playmakers on the field as much as you can. But at the end of the day, I think they also they want to be cognizant of not running Chase Brown into the absolute dirt either. So Samaje Perine being involved, maybe surprising to some, not surprising to me, but also not overly worrying to me.
And you know what's funny? You said this makes you think, like, how does this affect Chase Brown? That's what I think when I think about anything, honestly, how this affects Chase Brown. But, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat here. Obviously, I've been a Glazer far longer than you have. And Samaje Perine, again, like you said, he made his living doing this. He's just, I think it's better off that it's somebody in the passing game that's taking his stuff rather than someone like, say, a Zach Moss that was just going to take some potentially just straight up carries, maybe some short yardage. When Perine's in the backfield, he's either going to be pass protecting or running a route. He's not going to be getting many straight-up carries there. The fact that Chase Brown is still going to get the boatload of the actual carries, in addition to the fact that he proved to be a far more than capable receiving back. Like, yeah, Perine will get his, but so will Brown. And again, if the offense is as good as we think it's going to be, it really shouldn't matter in the sense that Brown will still get, the stuff that Brown does get will be more than enough.
Yeah, Chase Brown still very much projects to be a big load back. Dante Thornton Jr., Pat, playing ahead of Jack Besh. He started the game alongside Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker and just seems to be, he's honestly sounded like he's been firmly ahead of Besh since the day he was drafted, which is hilarious because he was drafted, 2 rounds later than Besh was. But it sounds like Dante Thornton is going to be that sort of prototypical X receiver for the Raiders. There's fantasy value to be had with Dante Thornton Jr. I think you got to do some soul searching and just decide how much you believe in him. But the way he plays, Pat, being that, X receiver, that big body, that deep threat guy, Gino's a really good passer. Gino's a really good thrower of the football. I could absolutely see a world where Dante Thornton is a startable wide receiver 2 type if things were to break right, just because of the uninspiring sort of competition ahead of him. Obviously, Brock Bowers is going to be the focal point of the pass game, as he should be, but Pat, there's a reason that people have taken forever to jump on the Jacoby Myers train, and it's not because Jacoby Myers isn't a good, reliable receiver. It's because he's just not spectacular at any one thing to where you're like, okay, nobody's ever going to surpass him as a talent. I don't know that Thornton can do that. I know that Thornton's probably going to have the opportunity to do that, and that's what really matters.
I think the question just becomes, what is your perception of this Raiders team and this offense? Because you think, the Raiders, they're just like a black hole for literally, that's what they are, the black hole, for fantasy production outside of Brock Bowers. But again, this is not the same Raiders. This is Pete Carroll's team. This is Chip Kelly's offense. We've seen, even though Pete Carroll likes to run the football, and that's surely what they're going to do with Ashton Genty, in Seattle, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were both very productive there. There can be more than one target on a team, run by Pete Carroll. And obviously Chip Kelly, tends to get a bunch of guys involved back in Philadelphia back in the day. It's just a matter of, do you think the Raiders can be good enough where there can be Bowers and there could be Myers, who at the very least is going to be eating up some targets and receptions, and Dante Thornton? Right now, I'm not willing to go beyond anything more than taking a stab at him late in drafts. But could it happen? Yes. The fact that he's already surpassed Besh with the lesser draft capital bodes well for him moving forward.
Yeah, he just feels like an exciting type of player to target. Again, you're targeting upside late in drafts, and if there's anybody Pat, it would not shock me if Dante Thornton Jr. ended up being the Raiders wide receiver 1 by the end of the year. And the fact you could draft a guy with that somewhat within his range of outcomes so late, I think he just becomes a really desirable dart throw. And again, this is the benefit, right? If it doesn't work out, you drop him and you move on. because
That's
you
Brand's
probably
first pick in the sleeper draft.
Yeah,
Dante Thornton.
you probably spent the 15th round pick on him at best. So yes, definitely something to watch there. Rico Dowdle played a lot with the starters, Pat. Chuba Hubbard played 5 of the first 7 plays, while Dowdle took each of the first 2 third down snaps. Now, Hubbard didn't play much on 3rd and 3+ to go last year anyway. Again, all these notes from Nate Yonke of PFF. He had 6 catches for 27 yards and 7 carries for 19 yards in those situations all of last year. So even if he misses out on some of these, 3rd and 3 or 3rd and long, sort of opportunities that Rico Dowdle may take, it shouldn't affect Hubbard much, because that's all you're losing out on is roughly not even 50 total yards and 6 catches that he had last year in those situations. What I would be worried about a little bit is just if he starts losing the goal line work, because anytime you have another running back playing meaningful snaps with the first team, it does make me wonder in what other situations they might use him over the course of a season. But I'm not overly worried yet. I still like Chuba Hubbard mainly because I like the Panthers' ascending offense. I like their O-line, and I think based on how they've assigned the money, Chuba Hubbard's probably their guy, and unless he really falters, I don't see Rico Dowdle kind of committing this hostile takeover of this backfield. But he is certainly going to be involved, and if anything does happen to Hubbard, I think he could be a really, really valuable play.
Well, exactly. I was going to say, we're looking at a weekly starter if Chuba Hubbard were to go down and he, was the big load guy in that offense. But it does make sense why they went and got him. I didn't even realize. I had a lot of Chuba Hubbard last year, as he was one of my only correct strong takes from last season. And I didn't even realize how poor the passing game production was for him. So it makes sense. That's something Rico Dowdle can do. Will he get a touchdown on the goal line here and there? Probably. There's going to be times where you're upset with him, but this doesn't do a whole lot with Chuba Hubbard for me, because from what we saw last year, this is typical. And if we think with Dave Canales, with Bryce Young, with everything, this team can get better and better and better, there's no reason to think that'll change. I just think they've upgraded their backup running back.
Yeah, I would agree. This is just a quick note, Pat, and this isn't even anything. I said most of this is learning about guys and how much they're going to play with the first team and what have you. This guy didn't teach us anything new, really, about how he was going to be used. I think the way we saw him used was exactly how we thought he'd be used. This one is about the performance. Travion Henderson is that fucking dude, man. Oh my God. Goodness. Takes his first touch for a touchdown on a kickoff return, and then he only touched the ball 2 other times, but every time he touches the ball, he does something cool. He either runs over a defender or breaks off a 20-yard play. He so looks the part of a dominant 3-down back. The only thing holding him back is the sheer existence of Ramondre Stevenson. But I'm at the point, Pat, where especially as a Patriots fan, I am using that uncertainty and that fear of Ramondre Stevenson's existence, who also looked pretty good in that game, by the way, as a benefit to be able to draft as much Travion Henderson as I can and just bet on the talent winning out. And bet that, here's the thing, when I look at guys like this, or really any pick, in the first 5 to 7 rounds of the draft, I think about what their absolute worst case scenario is. To me, Travion Henderson's worst case scenario is he's catching a lot of passes as the 3rd down back in this backfield. His pass protecting ability has been much appreciated by the coaching staff thus far, and I just don't see a world where he's a total bust. Do I see a world where he doesn't achieve this top end, production that aligns with his real talent level? Yeah, absolutely. That could, not come to fruition in year 1, but I just, the more we see from him, the more I want as much of him as I can get. And he is going to be climbing these ADPs.
I was about to say he's probably one of the hottest commodities in fantasy football right now. And rightfully so. Again, the kid just looked great. I personally got sniped by him. I was 1 pick away from him being in my flex in this draft I did, and I was very, very upset about it. But the one thing I will say is, similar to what you said, with Chuba Hubbard, if Ramondre Stevenson can steal some goal line work, and that's probably what he is going to do if he were to take anything. So that's a little concerning, but again, I think the talent will prevail. That said, don't let this completely take Ramondre Stevenson off your radar, Because at the end of the day, Travion Henderson's still a rookie. Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, not Kyle Shanahan, the New England Patriots offensive coordinator.
Very good.
They may want to lean a little more on the veteran, at least to start the year. So, still, draft Henderson. Let him fly up the ADP. That's all fair. But don't forget about Ramondre Stevenson, especially if his stock starts to fall a little bit. Not saying he's going to be valuable, but I think there is a scenario in which he is, at least at the start of the year.
God, I'm excited for this season as a Patriots fan, and I haven't said that and truly meant it in quite a long time.
7 wins are going to hit like crack.
17 wins, bitch. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is...
shut the hell up, Bill.
Bill Krosky-Merritt is the Commanders' RB3. Pat, for their first preseason game, this is about as much as we could have hoped for about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. We talked about him a little bit last week. I was a little bit more buying into the hype of him than you were. I'm happy with this as a result for their first preseason game that he started over both the replacement level Commander backs from last year, Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez. The fact that he's already there next up in line behind Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler tells me that he's going to have the opportunity to work himself into that rotation and possibly take more and more work as the season goes along if he proves he can handle it, because starting as RB3, that probably means he's earmarked for, I don't know, 2 or 3 touches in a game, maybe. Maybe they really only do go with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler in the games that count. But this is what I'm excited to monitor throughout the rest of the preseason, especially if they do play their starters at some point. The Commanders did not play their starters at all in this game. Hence, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt starting over Robinson and Eckler. So look, I'm excited about him. There's nothing to really say beyond the hype so far has somewhat materialized a little bit on the field now with his standing.
I'm like I said last week, I think this might be a case of a guy we're talking about years from now as one of these.
The GOAT? Yeah, I agree.
As one of these, training camp
Mount Rushmore running backs? Yeah, I agree.
I still think obviously something needs to happen to Brian Robinson or two-time friend of the show Austin Eckler. I don't think this.
Something already did happen to them. Brian Robinson's bad and Austin Eckler's old. Sorry, Austin. That's what happened.
And he's bald too. You can't overlook the bald aspect.
I don't know what Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt looks like at all. For all I know, he could be bald too. What's he look like? Oh no. Oh, Pat. He looks like a star. Are you
jorking it to Ja'Cory? You're Ja'Corying it?
I'm Jorka Krosky-Merritting. I don't know, whatever
right
the fuck.
Who else out there
he looks like a
Krosky-Merritt right now?
He looks like a fucking stud. All right, let's move on. Travis Hunter, Pat, one of my other boys, played 11
This is far more consequential, yes.
This is more consequential. Travis Hunter played 11 of 12 snaps with the starters. The only play he missed was a 2 wide receiver set play with Brian Thomas Jr. and Diami Brown out there. Fun fact, Liam Cohen's Buccaneers stayed in 11 personnel, meaning 3 wide receivers on the field, hence the formation that Travis Hunter played all of in this game. Cohen's Buccaneers stayed in 11 personnel 72% of the time last season, and Cohen's 2022 Rams, obviously also McVay's 2022 Rams, but they led the league in 11 personnel formations at 91%. Hunter, in the snaps he did play, also lined up in the slot on 5 of his 11 snaps, tying Brian Thomas Jr., who also aligned in the slot for 5 of his 12 snaps. Pat, I'm rock hard. I'm rock hard. I'm absolutely rock hard.
Not only did Liam Cohen's Bucks run the 11-man a lot, it's because they had such a good slot receiver in Chris Godwin, who had 50 catches and 5 touchdowns out of the slot last year. So now the thing about this Jaguars team is they don't necessarily have the obvious Chris Godwin to put in there. You'd think in theory it would be... You'd think in theory it could be Brian Thomas Jr., but if Travis Hunter can sneak into that as well, because not only do they run it, did they run the formation in Tampa last year, they used it. They used that slot. And obviously, even in Jacksonville last year with Christian Kirk there for some of it, that he is kind of exclusively a slot receiver, they don't have that necessarily surefire slot receiver. So if Hunter can get worked in there more... That's really big. That's honestly the biggest takeaway I'm taking from this preseason game.
Yeah, I'm just telling you guys. I'm gonna tell you guys one last time. Draft Travis Hunter. That's all I'm gonna say. Travis that you should probably not be drafting on the same team, though. Travis Etienne, Pat, started for the Jaguars and played every snap on their first drive.
I'm very upset about this, honestly. This is the one. Like, I was about ready to take Tank Bigsby 101 in the Steelers draft. And then
this is disgusting.
It's so brutal because talking about Liam Cohen in Tampa again last year, even though Bucky Irving did emerge, there was still a lot of Rashad Way. Sean Tucker had the week, granted someone was hurt though. But he's not necessarily known for being straightforward with his backfields. And in a situation now where we at least have two running backs of a similar talent level, this could get nasty. Unfortunately. I was kind of all in on the Tank Bigsby train. I was yanking on my Tank. And yanking for Tank, that'll be our one for that. And this it didn't just kind of like smother the fire. It dumped a bucket of water on the fire right now. Like, I am completely flaccid about Tank Bigsby at the moment, unfortunately. Not that that's going to hold. Like, there's still that part of me that thinks he is the better running back. And there was still so much stuff out of camp about how impressive he was. He was probably had one of the most positive, Jesus, can't think of the word, hype, whatever, media, whatever, coming out of that camp, out of anybody. So seeing this was just confusing. Like, had we seen it where it was like, yep, ETN is still going to be the guy, yada, 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 and this happens, it's like, oh, okay, and it's like, yeah, Tank Bigsby looks great, all this and that, toot, whatever, and then Travis Etienne takes quite literally every snap with the starters.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Pat, is like, that's kind of why I don't necessarily believe this. And you could look at it and say, oh, well, you don't believe it because it doesn't align with your priors. No, I don't believe it because out of all the things we've talked about so far about our reactions to the preseason, everything else that happened lined up with camp reports to some degree. Like, none of the guys that played ahead of other guys or had a certain amount of playing time surprised us necessarily. I mean, maybe the amount Travis Hunter played, you could say surprised you, whatever. Maybe Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt being the RB3 surprised you, whatever. But all that stuff lined up with at least the drum beat that we had heard during camp. This was the exact opposite, which is why I am going to withhold judgment until I see another preseason game where hopefully the Jaguars use some of their starters again. Because I just don't necessarily believe that, like, Travis Etienne is that level of, I'm playing every snap with the starters kind of guy. I'm also at a point where with the Jags backfield, Pat, that, like, I don't know how much it's worth a pick outside of a speculative, maybe Tootin pick in the last round. Because I look at people keep trying to make this comparison to the Buccaneers, and I'm like, yeah, Liam Cohen may be trying to replicate that success to some degree, but like,
backs aren't as good, I don't think.
The backs aren't as good, and the O-line's not as good. More importantly, like, we know that one more for a fact that the O-line's not as good. So I think Liam Cohen may be sort of, look, you have to do the best with what you can, right? But like, the perception may be that he is sort of ignorantly trying to replicate it with an O-line that's just not capable of it. And Travis Etienne, especially, Pat, like, he's just such a fucking weird player because he was absurdly inefficient last year, but then you're like, okay, he battled some injuries. He hurt his shoulder in September and he hurt his hamstring in October. But then you look at the game logs and like, he was asked before either of those injuries. I'm at the point with Travis Etienne where I'm done chasing the RB3 season that he had 2 years ago because I just, for whatever reason, I don't think he's that guy anymore. And I think even in that year, Pat, he wasn't that efficient. He just got like all the touches and managed to, convert on the high value touches. I think this coming back down to earth was inevitable for Travis Etienne. I am not at all buying into the possibility of him being like Liam Cohen's star back here. I just don't think it's happening.
Similarly to the Bears, who we've talked about so much this offseason, a lot of this hype surrounding Jacksonville's offense is speculative. New head coach, who granted is coming off a very successful tenure as an offensive coordinator. Again, we've talked about Trevor Lawrence ad nauseum on this. I still at least think he can be a good NFL quarterback. He will never meet the hype. And there's a lot of talent around him. Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud. Travis Hunter, obviously a top pick. And some good running backs. I'm a big Brent Strange fan myself. Like, it could all happen there, but what if it doesn't? Again, like you said, the offensive line isn't as good as it was in Tampa. I don't think the running backs are quite as good as the personnel they had in Tampa. But at the same time, I think Bigsby and ETN, you said it's really only worth a dart at 2, and I'm going to disagree on that. I still think that Bigsby and ETN are still decent shots to take, depending on who you believe in, but not as a starter, and honestly, not even as like your first spot on your bench. I did take Tank Bigsby in the draft, but it was as like my second spot on the bench there. Again, it needs to be in a position where you understand you are taking something of a dart throw. Even though it's a little earlier, there is more capital involved, you're still kind of hoping for things to fall a certain way to do it, and you just can't bank on that being somebody that you might have to consider in your starting lineup very early in the season.
Yeah, if there's one takeaway I could have from all this,
Here we go.
It's this.
Duval.
All right, Pat. Let's get on.
I'm surprised you hadn't got to that yet, honestly.
Let's do the two biggest ones left, and then we'll rapid fire through some of the rest. But the two biggest ones left from the preseason, I think this was a big one. Breece Hall played 50% of the Jets' first team snaps. He played 5 snaps. He split with Braylon Allen, who played 2 snaps, and Isaiah Davis, who played 3 snaps. I went on a whole rant a couple weeks ago about why Breece Hall was still a good fit in this offense and could produce. All that goes out the window if the offense themselves and the coaching staff decides they just don't want to use the guy. I think he's
trade him.
I know. Again, like I stand by saying that he's such a great pass catching back, and Justin Fields likes to check the ball down. Hard to do that when he's not on the field. So I have very much soured on Breece Hall because the camp reports were not less than glowing, but we heard about how they wanted to use a committee, and now we're seeing it play out in real time. I just don't want to invest in a guy like Breece Hall in an offense that I'm not sure is good enough to support 1 fantasy relevant running back, let alone 2 if they're going to actually give 2, if not 3 guys meaningful playing time. I'm still iffy on how much I actually think Isaiah Davis is going to be involved, but it does seem like they love Braylon Allen, and Braylon Allen is going to play quite a bit. So I'm kind of, unless things shift drastically from now until Labor Day weekend when our draft is, Pat, I'm kind of good on Breece Hall. And if he falls several rounds, we can talk, but it doesn't seem like the vibes are there for him.
It is unfortunate because we kind of talked about, why are the vibes this way? Who knows why, but the straight up fact is they are. They are, at the end of the day. And if Braylon Allen is truly going to be the David Montgomery in this offense, you're banking on them using Hall as much as they use Jahmyr Gibbs in this Detroit style.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the Jets offense is not going to be as efficient as the Lions
that's
offense,
what I was about to say,
and will not score enough or replicate nearly the amount of just snaps or yards accumulated to support both.
That's what I was gonna say too. Is that this offense could just be straight up bad.
It seems likely.
Just straight up bad. Not just, obviously, it's going to be a far cry from Detroit, but there is not, not even a small chance that this offense could be straight up bad. So, yeah, it's really, again, another one where my erection is no longer lasting 4 hours. Again, I'm not saying I wouldn't take Breece Hall, but there's other guys in that range that I would much rather go with.
I saw a great video of another creator, I believe his name's Mick Jason, about the Jets. It was just, gosh, I can't believe, Justin Fields on the Jets, it's not working? How could that be? It's like, yeah, when you take a step back, it's Justin Fields on the New York Jets with a first-time coaching. It's like, yeah, this is probably not going to be a very good team. R.J. Harvey started over J.K. Dobbins and got 7 carries and 2 targets in 12 snaps. So he basically got the ball every snap that he was on the field. J.K. Dobbins got 0 carries and 1 target in 7 snaps with the starters. Now, I hesitate to take as much away from this as I do other games just because it's Sean Payton, and this dude is a notorious dickhead with his backfield. But this is still encouraging for R.J. Harvey investors and for those of us who, want him to be the guy in this backfield because we think he's probably got a little more juice than J.K. Dobbins at this point. So this is a good first step at the very least. This is exactly what you want to see if you're an R.J. Harvey believer.
It's funny because you could have used a lot of words for Sean Payton, and yet I think dickhead is the most appropriate one. So that got me. Again, with a lot of talk has been Dobbins this, Dobbins that. I'm not ready to completely jump on the R.J. Harvey bandwagon. But I do think it is encouraging. Yeah, obviously, it's more encouraging than not encouraging. But yeah, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in this because he is an incredible troll. But he's not the biggest troll. You know who the biggest fucking troll is? Arthur fucking Smith, who's out there not only putting Kenneth Gainwell.
Could have fucking seen this coming.
Caleb Johnson. And Jonnu Smith is apparently somewhat regularly taking snaps out of the backfield.
I could have told you all of this. I don't know why people seem to understate how much of a fucking menace Arthur Smith is. Every year, I found myself liking Caleb Johnson, and then I remembered who his OC was and said, oh, never mind, before Kenneth motherfucking Gainwell ever got a snap over him. But yes, Kenneth Gainwell started over Caleb Johnson in a game that Jaylen Warren didn't even play in. You can keep your Caleb Johnsons for this year. In Dynasty, different story, obviously, but you can keep your Caleb Johnsons for this year. I'm not dealing with the Arthur Smith boogaloo, especially if Caleb Johnson apparently can't pass protect. So yeah, draft Caleb Johnson at your own peril if you want. Draft any Steeler at your own peril, honestly, if you want. Good fucking luck.
Now, was Jaylen Warren injured? Is that why he didn't play?
He just didn't, like Aaron Rodgers didn't play. I think they just didn't play their like big name starters.
So that's a good sign for Jaylen Warren, who you might be hearing more about in a future segment tonight. But yeah, Caleb Johnson, this is because Kenneth Gainwell, again, another guy that's in the league simply as a change of pace running back in Philadelphia. That's how he made his money. So like it does make sense that if they want to change a pace guy, it'll be the change of pace guy and not someone like Caleb Johnson. But yeah, all signs are not. You said the vibes are bad for Breece Hall. The vibes are not like if Arthur Smith could get Bijan Robinson to have to have bad vibes.
Yeah.
He can certainly do it with Caleb fucking Johnson. No disrespect to Caleb Johnson. Of course, the kid can still very much be a good player. He's not Bijan Robinson, and I am so, you took him in the bus draft last week. I agreed with you. I am so far out on Caleb Johnson. And again, that just makes Jaylen Warren seem better and better.
Yeah, Arthur Smith is a dark cloud of bad vibes at all times. All right, rapid fire takeaways. Okonkwo played every snap with the starters. I believe it was 20 snaps. Last year, he split time with Josh Wiley, who has fallen just completely down the depth chart, and Nick Vannett, who is no longer on the team. They did draft Gunnar Helm, who's going to play, I think, sort of that second-string tight end role. But Okonkwo, it seems like, may finally be getting the sort of usage and at least playing time that we've wanted to see out of him for years. And in an improved Titans offense, I'm not saying that you got to go out and like draft him and prioritize him, but I do think Chig could finally be back on the menu here. Zay Jones played more first-team snaps with the offense than Michael Wilson, so it looks like he may very well be their new wide receiver too.
Shit, my violin is in the car because I would have absolutely played it for myself over Michael Wilson right now.
You and your Michael Wilson fetish. Zay Jones has been very productive in the past, so this is something I think to at least keep in the back of your mind as well. Trey Benson played 11 snaps with the starters, but Connor played 7 of the first 8 snaps on that first drive, so not overly concerned here about the Benson drumbeat. I still don't really believe it. And then Marvin Mims, to go back to the Broncos here, played 16 of 19 snaps with the starters, operating as the clear wide receiver too. And if you remember how nuclear he was at the end of last season, this is sort of significant because if he is going to get a full complement of snaps, who's to say he couldn't do that over the course of a full season? One last thing I want to throw in here, Pat. I would like to, as much as this hurts me, and yes, this is largely because of one preseason game, I would like to retract one of my bust picks from last week. I think I'm back in on Calvin Ridley. I don't think I'm going to take him, but
here we go.
I'm going to, and this is
What's next? You're in on Kyle Pitts?
No. This is just that camp video all over again from like 2 years ago where he looked faster than everybody else. But I am back in on him as not a bust just because I'm starting to become more of a believer in Cam Ward is the real thing, and acknowledging the, heights that Cam Ward could take this offense to. I get it. And if Calvin Ridley and him are really going to be I basically what it came down to is I broke it down in my head of Calvin Ridley played the last couple of years with Will Levis and whatever the fuck else. And as much as I feel like Calvin Ridley burned me personally, I need to kind of put that out of my head because he's playing with, I think, a good quarterback now. Hopefully a good quarterback. So I just want to
definitely a better quarterback. And Again, I think that's also why Chigakonkwo getting the playing time he's getting is significant. The
100%.
fact that you're the biggest preacher I know of the number 2 target in your offense. There is Tyler Lockett there, but Tyler Lockett is also 100 years old. And there's all reason to believe, even a healthy Tyler Lockett, Chigakonkwo could be the number 2 guy in a Brian Callahan offense with a number 1 pick at quarterback. Not saying he is, like, I really whiffed on tight end bad in the first draft I did. Like, Jake Ferguson is currently in my lineup as the starter. That's how bad it was. But Chigakonkwo was a guy, I threw 3 other darts at tight ends at the end of the draft, and Chigakonkwo was one of them. And with a tight end position being so, scrupulous at that point, he's a good shot to take, and that's why. Similar to Ridley. Well, Ridley's obviously going a lot higher, but the same reason why they can both work.
Yeah, I see Ridley, and this is not to say he's going to do it to this degree, but the reason I came around on him, Pat, is because I was one of the biggest beneficiaries of Cooper Kupp when Matthew Stafford got to LA, and it just feels like a diet possibly version of that, where it's like he's far and away the best receiver in the room, and I need to just accept that. And he's got a quarterback that seems like he's going to be willing to chuck the ball, and he's got a head coach who coached, Joe fucking Burrow, throwing the ball to Jamar Chase. I have to accept that he can be pretty good this year. So just I'm revoking my bus pick there. All right, let's get into our sleepers draft. Pat be sleeping over there. Pat, you've got the first pick here because you forfeited the first pick in the bus draft to me last week, which I'm glad you did because DeAndre Swift deserved to be the 101 of that draft. So feel free.
I don't believe I would have taken him, so I'm okay
so
with that.
Go ahead here. Who is your first of all? How are you defining sleeper for the sake of this draft, and then make your pick?
Beating their value by a considerable margin.
Okay,
we may pick somebody that's in the 3rd or 4th round because if they're going to finish as a top 5 at their position, that's a sleeper because they are being slept on their potential value. I'm actually also going to try. I'm building a team. I'm going to try to form a team here with a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then 1 flex. So that's how I will try to do it.
I'll replicate. I'll try to match
that may change depending on what you do. So my first pick here at 101, I think this is one of the more popular guys. It's Ricky Pearsall. I don't need to do all the rigmarole about it. If, Brandon Ayuk is out, Jawan Jennings is banged up, unhappy with his contract, George Kittle is there. George Kittle's the number 1 target. They will run a lot. They are still the 49ers. There is still a ton of value. First round pick was busy recovering from literally being shot in the chest last year.
It's an epidemic.
So it makes sense that he may not have fully picked up to the potential they wanted him to. But now the stars are aligning there, and I think he is, outside of George Kittle, he is the pass catcher you want out of San Francisco by a lot.
Yeah, being drafted near the likes of Jordan Addison, Jawan Jennings, Chris Godwin, Deebo Samuel, Jaden Reed, Khalil Shakir at the position. 100% love Ricky Pearsall a lot more than those guys at that point in the draft. The ceiling is just much higher than any of those guys. Like there is no universe where, a healthy, even unsuspended like Jordan Addison has a higher ceiling than Ricky Pearsall. It's just not happening. All right, Pat. I have done very little research for this, so I'm gonna see which names scream out at me here to pick. I have one guy in mind, so I guess I'll go with him. I'm gonna start us off, Pat, with a pretty late pick here, a pretty late sleeper, and it's a guy that I just don't think is getting enough love. Along with, he's getting overshadowed by a lot of these other rookies and a lot of these other sleeper situations, but it's a guy that I really, really believe in. And it's Jaden Higgins, the Houston Texans wide receiver. I don't think there is enough. I don't think it's being talked about enough that the Texans brought in the most heralded offensive coordinator hire of the offseason with Nick Caley, McVay disciple. We know how well that tends to work out. And the fact that, they brought him in specifically to, make the whole offense better, but to get the best out of CJ Stroud, to get the best out of a guy who has sort of top 5, at least top 10 talent at the position, we believe, in the NFL, and who everything just broke down around him last year. Jaden Higgins is, to me, the easiest way in on the bet that the Texans offense takes a step forward this year. Because if they do, and they figure things out, I don't really care about Dalton Schultz. Like, I do think he can be productive if this offense gets back to, 2023 sort of form. But it's not going to materialize that well. Nico Collins is obviously the alpha, super duper freaky number one there. But Jaden Higgins, I think, is the guy that's got the clearest path to that number 2 target. He's another big guy on the outside playing opposite Nico. And I just, again, if things break the way that the Texans are hoping they do, and I still believe in the Texans as a talent core, for a team, and I love the Nick Caley hire, the only concern becomes the O-line, which is definitely a valid concern, but Pat, that wasn't a limiting factor to Joe Burrow throwing 97 fucking touchdowns last year, and for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both being top 5 receivers in fantasy points per game. Like, the Bengals offensive line blows. So I could absolutely see C.J. Stroud. I mean, I almost picked C.J. Stroud for this. I decided to pick Jaden Higgins instead, just because I think he's got a slightly better path to being a startable player for your fantasy team. I'm starting to buy in more and more to this Texans offense, really rebounding, even if the O-line stays kind of bad.
No, absolutely. Like, Dalton Schultz, like you said, could be valuable, but not number 2 target in a potentially good offense levels of valuable. So right. I think that's a good pick. Not necessarily someone on my radar for this draft, but I agree. Okay, my second pick now. I think this is crazy to the point where, you talk about someone that could be a number 2 target in what could be a good offense. This guy could be the number 1 target in what's a really good offense. And his positional value is fucking insane, going at tight end 11. It's Tucker Kraft.
Oh, yeah. Kraft mac and cheese, baby.
I think that you look down at that point of the tight end ADP, and you're looking at players like TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Evan Engram, David Njoku, Tyler Warren. They all have the, I don't dislike really any of those guys, but just the fact that with so much uncertainty in that passing game, not that there's a lack of options, but just who's going to emerge, especially now Jaden Reed being hurt, throws a loop into it. Kraft can really emerge here, and it's clear that Jordan Love has a good rapport with him. They run him in the fucking tush push. Like, they're not afraid to get him involved creatively like they would have done with Jaden Reed, and they still will do it even if Jaden Reed is around. I think we're looking at someone who could smash his ADP and potentially finish as a top 5 tight end at the end of the year here. So for the some other good tight end sleepers that I'll mention later, but for this, he is by far, he was the smash pick of the tight end position.
Well, Pat, I mean, I matched you with the receiver pick in the first round, so I mean, I'm just going to keep matching you at positions because
Jonnu Smith
sounds like a fun exercise here. Kyle Pitt, no. Let's see how long it takes me to not pick a rookie, because I am going to pick Colston Loveland here. Going a few picks later than Tucker Kraft. He's going ADP of tight end 15, Tucker Kraft tight end 10, or I guess these are the consensus ranks, not ADP. Close enough. Colston Loveland is a guy that it's purely a bet on talent and coaching staff belief in him. Colston Loveland played, I think it was 6 snaps in their preseason game before coming out like earlier than any of their other starters that played in that game. Not all their starters played. Caleb Williams didn't even play in that game, but they are clearly valuing Colston Loveland. Cole Kmet basically demoted to the second team. It's one of those, Pat, where I struggled to like really picture like the clearest path for him being a top 2 target in this offense, because there's so many other guys that it could go to. But then I'm like, with Ben Johnson kind of hand-picking the guy, I'm just going to bet on it happening and see where the other chips fall. Because I'm not going to have a ton of investment in a guy like DJ Moore. I'm not going to have a ton of investment in even Luther Burden, who is starting off, super slow, having missed a bunch of time due to injury. Rome Odunze, I could see. But Colston Loveland at tight end 15, like, this is Ben Johnson who turned Sam Laporta into literal god in what also seemed to be a sort of crowded receiver room. Obviously, it had Amon-Ra St. Brown. It had Jamison Williams. I'm like, I kind of see some of the comparisons there, and I'm just going to bet on Ben Johnson's guy being a guy. That's kind of where I'm going with this.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Again, part of my big whiff on tight end was there were 3 picks in front of me, and I was looking at Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, and I'm like, all right, I'm getting one of these guys. And I actually would have taken Loveland over Warren had the opportunity presented itself. Yeah. And they both got sniped, and I was like, I was on a flight, first of all. Biggest swamp ass you could imagine. And I was absolutely distraught. By the way, the woman next to me on my flight to Las Vegas just projectile vomited for like 40 minutes.
Did she see your team? Is that why?
Well, this was a different flight. I should have known
okay.
that was an omen for why I would lose over $500 at the casino. I should have known, but yeah, so tough plane rides for me, but not getting Colston Loveland was not the worst experience I had on an airplane in the past 5 days. Let's just put it that way. All right, back to me. So so I'll actually go. This is a nasty pick in the sense where it's just like it's a player you don't want to like for one reason or another. It's not Kyle Pitts. Don't worry. It's everyone's favorite team. Yeah, here we go.
Oh,
it's Dak Prescott. It's Dak Prescott.
That's fine. I thought you were going running back, and I was going to be very concerned regardless of who you picked.
No.
Okay, no, Dak Prescott's fine.
And again, we are banking on the health of him. Like, I am looking at it from all angles where, like, I pick third in our league. I am very much considering CeeDee Lamb if Jamar Chase and Bijan Robinson go 1 and 2. Like, in theory, they should. If Dak is healthy, I think him going at quarterback 13 is crazy over the likes of Justin Fields, again, who has the rushing upside, but is bad. That's a great Carmelo Anthony is bad. And then guys like Brock Purdy and Jared Goff, who, yes, they're very solid, but the ceiling is a little capped. Dak has the floor and the ceiling. And say what you will about the Cowboys, they have the weapons. They have an elite receiver in CeeDee Lamb. We know the talent is there with George Pickens. Jake Ferguson is a solid tight end. And their running game is dog shit. So if Dak stays healthy, everything can align here for him to massively exceed his ADP here. Again, you don't like to say good things about the Cowboys. I think Dak gets a bit of a bum rap. Obviously, has not performed necessarily when it matters. But again, similar to Tony Romo, the guy's a damn good quarterback. And if he's healthy here, everything could come together, and he could have a really good year. He's one of my favorite picks of anywhere.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. Obviously, the concern with Dak is just the lack of rushing production that he's going to give you. But he is very easily a guy that can get you there off of passing volume alone, because they will very well have to be the most pass-heavy team possibly in the NFL.
And like I said, too, but guys like Jared Goff, I mean, Brock Purdy has a little rushing upside, but other guys in that area like Jared Goff, have little rushing upside, but I think the situation can work enough to kind of negate that. And when you're picking at that point, you're not looking for necessarily the full package. So yeah, Dak's my guy.
I like it. Look, it's incredibly easy for me to pick Drake May here, right? Drake May is like the
I wouldn't
sleeper.
call you a homer.
Drake May is the sleeper quarterback of this fantasy season, truthfully, because he's the only guy that when you look past that, I mean, I would say even just the top 4 quarterbacks, really, that you think has some pretty high-end rushing upside to at least complement his game. So I'm going to go a different direction, Pat, with my quarterback pick here as I continue to match you position for position, and go with a guy that I'm sure people are sick of hearing about, and I don't care because I'm still a believer, and I think he's now got probably his best supporting cast that he's had in a few years. I'm going with Justin Herbert. I am still just a believer in the talent. I understand that talent got picked off 4 times in the last time we saw him on a football field. I'm also aware that actual NFL playoffs don't matter for fantasy football, and he threw 3 interceptions all of last season and early in the year dealt with some lower body injuries that prevented him from playing to his true potential. The Chargers are already talking about getting him to use his legs and leveraging that more this year and actually being able to do it because he's coming into the season healthy. I think signing Keenan Allen is a pretty significant signing for Justin Herbert specifically, just because it gives him another reliable guy to throw to. Now he's got Ladd McConkey, he's got Keenan Allen, and he's got a bunch of other young guys surrounding him. He's got a completely revamped running back room. Yes, the Rashawn Slater thing hurts, but I think just having... If you have at least one elite tackle, I think you're okay, and I think Joe Alt is going to be able to hold down the fort to, still allow Justin Herbert to be really good. Again, we've seen Joe Burrow perform with god-awful O-lines, but still a decent tackle on one side with Orlando Brown. So I'm buying in again, Pat. Like, Justin Herbert's a guy, and again, you really don't have to invest in him super heavily to get him on your roster and bet on a guy that I firmly believe has the talent. this is a guy you can get pretty much free toward the end of your. I mean, he's QB 13 in consensus ranks, so I guess not free, but I really like him. He's a guy that, like, if I'm waiting on quarterback and I miss out on Drake May, who's like the guy, Justin Herbert's probably the first backup plan over anybody else.
Yeah, I agree. I'd throw Herbert and May right in there with Dak among the quarterbacks, or if you do decide to wait, you can still get some damn good value there. Okay, I mentioned Jalen Warren earlier. I don't quite think I'm going to go there in that situation because there's another starter that this guy, it's funny how times have changed. In 1 year alone, he'll go from my pal to my sleeper choice. It's Isaiah Pacheco. And we did discuss him, and I understand some of the reservations, specifically yours, that they may just be using some other guys. And the more I thought about it last year, it was so clear that Pacheco was just not ready to be back on the field.
Yeah.
But again, the Chiefs saw that, hey, we're battling for a Super Bowl. We want to get all of our talented guys in here if we can. And it just wasn't to be. He should not have been back out there. Granted, it didn't get hurt again. But now you're talking, he's got a full offseason. And before he got hurt, he was really getting everything. They didn't get Kareem Hunt really until he goes down. And Kareem Hunt was horribly inefficient. I owned Kareem Hunt. Thank God he managed to plunge his fat ass into the end zone as many times as he did, or he would have been, just useless. But he did that. Pacheco is somebody who I think they were really only using Hunt even throughout the year with Pacheco because Pacheco just couldn't handle being a big load back under the injury circumstances. I don't see any reason why he can't come back after a whole offseason of recovering and whatever and getting ready and being the clear-cut number one guy for the Chiefs. Brashard Smith got some pull here. It seems like he's more of an afterthought. Like, he's more of a guy fighting for a roster spot than anything. And I don't believe in Kareem Hunt or, God forbid, Carson Steele enough. I'm not saying he's going to be one of these guys that's getting 90% of the, like a Kyron Williams, Saquon Barkley type. No, but I still think he's going to be getting the lion's share of the touches on the Kansas City Chiefs. And this could be one of those where, again, I understand the reservations, but this could really be one where we're looking back and being like, duh. Like Isaiah Pacheco finishes a borderline RB1 and we're just like, duh. Like, everything pointed there. A couple things pointed in the other direction, but everything is pointing there, too, that this really could happen. And I think the fact that he's being drafted as a flex. He's not even being drafted as an RB2. As much as I do like Jalen Warren amongst the recent Steelers developments, I can't ignore this. I can't.
No, look, I'm with you. I've come around a little bit on Isaiah Pacheco over the last couple days, seeing, just how good he looks moving in camp and also really diving into the injury he had and, kind of recovery timelines behind that. I have a little thing here. So Pacheco, obviously another year removed from the injury, also a contract year for him, which is something we shouldn't take lightly. But it took Tony Pollard, Pat, who suffered a fractured fibula, about 10 months before he said he felt like his old self again. He broke it in January 2023, said he felt like his old self November 2023, so about 10 months. Pacheco, at the start of this season, will be about 11 and a half months post-injury. So there's good reason to believe he can be back to his old self. I think the question would become, how much do they limit him to protect him from overloading himself? But I am coming around to the idea that he's going to be their, real primary guy because nobody else there is really worth giving a lot of touches to. It doesn't mean they won't give them touches, but if you can get a guy who is seemingly clearly the most talented back in that offense, in that backfield that is so seemingly ambiguous right now, I think that is a good bet to make. My not concern with Pacheco. My reservation with drafting Pacheco is strictly the guys that he's going around at other positions. For example, he is 2 picks ahead in consensus rankings, or 2 picks ahead, in consensus rankings of Travis Hunter. So, that's a guy for me. He's a couple picks behind. Not that I've fallen in love with the guy, but behind Calvin Ridley. Other than that, though, I actually don't mind the range that he's in. Because if I really need a running back, it's probably him or Tony Pollard at this point. I'm not taking Caleb Johnson. I'm not taking Joe Mixon. I think he might be dead. I'm not taking Brian Robinson. So, yeah, certainly is back on the menu. So I like that pick. My running back pick, Pat, I'm just going to go real deep in my bag and
just pick Bashal 2 and
I'm not
okay.
picking 2. I'm going to go deep in my bag here, but it's going to be another sort of predictable guy that I could pick. It's Kyle Monangai of the Bears because fuck DeAndre Swift. That's why. I really think this is just a guy that I'm going to throw a dart at because it's a bet against the other guy. Could it very easily, could very easily not materialize, but could it very easily not materialize for like 9 weeks if it's going to at all this year? Sure. But I'm going to put him on my sleeper list regardless because I like the Bears. I like the moves they've made. I like Ben Johnson. I don't like DeAndre Swift, and I think he's bad at football. So I'm going with Kyle Monangai to be, funny enough, the other Rutgers back to emerge out of the 7th round.
Okay, really quick here to do our last round here. For my flex, I'm going to go with the guy that I've talked about all season. I think while he might be in a bad offense, I think he's got a great opportunity to be the number 2 target in his offense with 0 other competition behind him. You know who it is. It's my boy Mason Taylor. He's currently ADP is tight end 30. He's going behind Jatavion Sanders.
That's crazy.
Who is Jatavion Sanders? I don't know. Who? But, the only thing that I kind of pumped the brakes a little last week was because of this high ankle sprain. He practiced in full today. He's fine. Mason Taylor is already fine. And the Jets have been raving about him. He's been getting involved in some creative ways here. The only concern is just that is this offense good enough to even support a second target outside of Garrett Wilson? Who the hell knows? So... But thinking that almost any team can have a strong number 2 target, I love Mason Taylor. You could take him. You don't even literally have to draft him. He's going to be our vampire starting tight end.
That's probably true. All right, with my last pick, I've drafted 3 rookies and 1 non-rookie. I guess let's add another rookie here. I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka here. It's a really easy pick. But he's still somehow only wide receiver 46. It's not looking like Chris Godwin's going to be ready to start the season. So you're looking at a guy who is the most pro-ready receiver coming out of college by all reports, a guy who Baker Mayfield is unpromptedly praising in camp and who is probably going to be a starting outside receiver, at the very least starting in 3 receiver sets, which they will run a good amount of in Tampa. We mentioned what Cohen did with them last year. So even though, new OC still probably do some of the same things, I just think he's going to be really good if Godwin's not out there. And then Godwin and Evans will have injury risk throughout the year just because they're older guys. So I love Emeka Egbuka.
Honestly, the reason why I do too, the reison why I didn't really consider him that much is I think his ADP is flying and is going to continue to fly to the point where he's very appropriately rated, I would say. But yes, I very much agree.
I think that's fair. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Brand Coverage, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed our sleepers draft and everything else we brought to you. Just to recap our sleepers again, Pat picked Ricky Pearsall, Tucker Kraft, Dak Prescott, Isaiah Pacheco, and Mason Taylor. I picked almost all rookies: Jaden Higgins, Colston Loveland, Justin Herbert, Kyle Monangai, and Emeka Egbuka. If you're not taking shots at the rookies, then you don't like winning. But that'll do it for this episode. We'll be back here next week, same time. For Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you next time.
Always check your big loads. Bye-bye.
All right, and we've got some comments to get to. First, our donation questions. Mr. Andrew with $4.99 said, how much do questionable O-line/quarterbacks make you hesitant to pick guys like Genty, Brian Thomas, Puka over guys with good O-line and quarterbacks like Henry and Nico? I think that's a great question. Probably the most insightful question we've had on fantasy here in a while, honestly. So, obviously, it's all situation by situation. I'm definitely more hesitant to take a running back if his O-line is bad, but in the early rounds, it's less of a concern to me. Because in the early rounds, you're dealing with guys who are so talented that it doesn't matter as much. Like, look, Ashton Genty is a guy that I'm all over. I love him for fantasy this year. I also don't think the Raiders line is going to be that bad. People freaked out, and we didn't even talk about this in the show, Pat, but people were freaking out over Genty's 3 carries for -1 yards. Look, his first carry went for 3 yards. His next carry, he got assaulted by an unblocked defender, which I know that's the knock on the line. the Raiders were already starting or already had in 3 backup linemen by that point. It was their backup left guard that went just the completely wrong direction and let a guy right by him into Genty's chest. So I'm not as worried about that. I think in the first round, it's just not a super, super big concern of mine. Later, yes.
The Raiders are not going to be good. They are not going to make the playoffs, but they are not going to be bad. I will say that they are not going to be in the handful of the worst team. I think they'll get a pick around 10. Yeah, is what I'll say. But, I pretty much agree because you look in Genty's case, I mean, not having the best quarterback may play out in his favor. The fact that he only has Geno Smith, they may just give him the ball time after time after time. And it was first time in the NFL here, and obviously a lot of the Twitter was hilarious. Even though, it's an extreme overreaction, it was so stupid, the Twitter was hilarious. Yeah. But I'm not worried in the slightest about that. Brian Thomas, I'm not worried about it either because while you say, the offensive line may not be good, that's true. The quarterback play isn't awful, and we think the offensive play overall is going to be better with with Duval, Liam Cohen there involved. Do we do that during not the show? Can that be done during the...
Duval.
Okay, apparently, yes it can. All right, so... And Puka, again, Puka's a little worrying just because I think Jimmy G is a decent drop-off from Stafford, but these guys all have their merits. I mean, if you want to, if you're, dead tied on 2 of these people, like Henry and Puka I was, and that wants to be your deciding factor, sure. But don't overthink it in the first round. These guys are all in the first round or early second for a reason.
In the first round, you're probably going to be okay no matter what. But for my personal rankings, I have Nico so clearly over Brian Thomas and Puka Ngata just because partially the quarterback situation.
Honestly, I almost picked Nico Collins as a sleeper somehow.
I get that. Nico Collins has as much. He has as much. Pat, the whole soliloquy I went on Jaden Higgins applies to Nico as well. I think Nico could easily be the wide receiver 1 this year. So yes, that is quarterback is absolutely a reason I like Nico. more than guys like BTJ and Puka. But just in that first round, everybody's pretty good. Gamerling with $5 said, when last did a first round pick quarterback lead a team to the playoffs in their first year, aside from Andrew Luck? This could forewarn Ward's 2025 season. I mean, I'm not predicting Cam Ward makes the playoffs with the Titans. First round, first pick quarterback. That's also a really cherry-picked stat because Jaden Daniels led his team to the playoffs last year, and he was not the first pick, but that almost makes it even harder. So I don't know. That seems like a very... I don't think anybody
thinks... I still think the Titans are going to be pretty bad, to be honest with you. I don't expect them to be a great team, but I think we will be looking at Cam Ward as a guy that has potential for the future.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be Cam Ward did all right, and we like what we see, but I don't necessarily think it's going to make the Titans a playoff team.
No. Lucian with $10, thank you, man. Said, I know your sleeper draft is probably players for fantasy. Brand pick Pitts, not, no. But I'm taking the opportunity to share my sleeper teams, Jets and Raiders. Feel free to ridicule me. I'm on board with the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are going to be bad, Pat. I think the Raiders will be knocking on the door of a wild card spot up until the last couple weeks of the year. I think they'll be competitive. The Jets...
You know what?
No.
I'm not going to agree with Lucian here. But I think I said this a couple weeks ago, I do think it's very possible with the defense they have. Again, it's the Jets. That's kind of what poisons everyone is. It's the Jets. And that's for good reason. They're a pathetic embarrassment of a franchise. But maybe, I think it's just that I want Aaron Glenn to work out so well because this guy has paid his dues and he deserves... Don't poop on Aaron Glenn. He hasn't done anything wrong. Except take the job, maybe. But... I want it to work so well. I'm hoping that maybe he can bring in a whole new philosophy to this franchise. And again, the quarterback play is concerning, is the biggest thing, is that they still don't really have a great quarterback. And their offensive weapons, it's concerning. They want to run a Lions-style offense with nobody there. Hence why I like Mason Taylor so much. Do I think everything is going to align for it to happen? No. But can it? If everything aligns for them, what do I think the peak is? I think they can win a wild card. If everything really falls together, I just don't think it happens here.
I don't think they can do that. And allow me to end this question's answer with the Jets theme song. All right. Next question. William with 5 said, do you draft kickers in fantasy? Would you draft Cam Little or another kicker in the 5th round?
Who put this?
Yes, we draft kickers in fantasy. We still have kickers in fantasy.
Do not
draft a kicker until your round starts with at least 13. And that's probably still too early. Also, I don't care that Cam Little hit a 70-yarder. Hot take, most kickers can do that. Their teams don't let them try because the risk reward is not worth it in a real game.
That was very cool.
It was very cool, very impressive.
It wasn't like Justin Tucker's 65-yarder to tie the record had to doink off the bottom of the crossbar. He just made this one. It's cool. Is that making me? No, there's still, again, I don't actually think about kickers a lot. I didn't think about kickers at all until I drafted my boy Kaimi Fairbairn in my league this past week. But there's still a good amount of kickers I would rather have than Cam Little. So don't let Cam Little making this 70-yarder you think he's going to be one of the first kickers off the board. Is he a starter? Yeah, probably. Should he be one of the top
Jags?
12 kickers? Yes, and he does have some talent here, but I'm just talking out of my ass. Brandon Aubrey, Kaimi Fairbairn, Jake Bates, Cameron Dicker.
I like Tyler Loop, Ravens' new kicker, just because he's with the Ravens.
Just because of the Ravens. Alpha Male Butker is another guy that's always up there. Tyler Bass is a little scary, but there's already 6 guys. There's already 6 guys I named right there, so don't overthink it on the kicker here. But if you're one of the last teams to pick your kicker and you think Cam Little's going to be a stud because of this, sure, but
Cam Little was around last year. This isn't like a new thing.
Exactly.
He's not a new kicker.
I'll be honest, I don't even know who all the starting kickers in the NFL are. Did I even put that on my... Yes, I did on my... Let's see. Oh, Justin Tucker's still on here. I haven't updated this. Younghoe Koo. Let's see. Honestly, Brandon McManus on the Packers. Will Lutz.
How about Andres Borregales? Patriots' new kicker, baby.
Chase McLaughlin was really good last year. Honestly, even Jake Elliott. I don't think this really does anything for Cam Little. I think he's still, maybe the last starter, one of a couple last starters drafted.
Yeah, and I probably went too far saying.
I love the kicker talk, man. We're going to have to talk a little bit about the kickers when we talk about the defenses, right? Because we always do our first few defense schedules. We should throw kickers in there because, unfortunately, leagues do still have it. If it was up to me, they would not.
Yeah, I probably went too far saying every kicker can do what he did, but a lot of kickers can hit from 70. It's just they're never in the situation to do that.
Sebastian Janikowski, who drank a handle of Crown Royal.
Janikowski could hit a fucking 90-yarder. Lucian with another 5 said, favorite rookie to have rushed for 1,159 yards and 15 touchdowns last college season. Special to him, baby! All right. Bailey with 2. Just kidding. You thought I was done? Obviously not. Bailey with $2 said, as a Jags fan, Cam Little, best kicker in the NFL. Jesus.
Oh, here we go.
Alex with $1.99 said, first head coach to get fired this year. Oh God, I had my take. I had my clear take. My first one that comes to mind is Mike McDaniel, but I don't know that I think he'll be first.
Ooh, I like that. I feel like there's an obvious answer here that. Oh, Brian Daboll.
Yeah.
Because it's so bizarre because, Kevin Stefanski, I think, is a good coach. You look at the Browns, eventually he is going to get fired just because of their lack of performance, but he's going to get picked up by another team and be a really successful coach somewhere. It's just he's with the Browns. So I don't know if he necessarily is really on the hot seat, but would it be funny to say Brian Schottenheimer? Nah, again.
It would be kind of funny. Would it be even funnier to say, Kellen Moore?
No, I think...
Mike McDaniel and Brian Daboll are the
two
big
McDaniel
ones.
second.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Besides that, honestly, I don't really think there's any coach. I'm going to say it. I say it every year, and I'm going to say Sean McDermott should be on the hot seat, man. I'm not just using this to make an Al-Qaeda joke, but if they don't get it done this year, he won't be the first one to get it done. But I do think if they fail to get it done again in terms of getting to the AFC Championship game, Super Bowl, we could see them finally move on from him. Again, not to say he's not a good coach, but it just hasn't happened there.
I think that's fair. Alex with another $1.99 said, what round 2 pick is most likely to be a league winner? Round 2 pick. I mean, there's one guy that I really like in round 2 that I think could certainly be a league winner, and it's Drake London.
I love
I think
some Drake London.
I think Drake London also has like wide receiver 1 overall potential. It's always hard to say that with Jamar Chase just existing. But if Michael Penix Jr. turns out to not even be good, but just be Jameis Winston, which seems to be kind of his floor outcome with his the way he plays, Drake London's going to be the guy catching all those passes.
Well,
fuck
exactly.
Kyle Pitts and Darnell Moody's not healthy.
You're just going to say fuck it Drake out there somewhere. That's the one he's going to be saying.
Right.
Obviously, I have a huge Chase Brown fetish, but my answer will be Ladd McConkey. We both like Justin Herbert here, and if that offense can take another step forward and Herbert can get back to being, as good as he can be, and Ladd is his clear-cut number 1 target, I think he could have a humongous year, especially in PPR leagues.
Yeah. Lucian with another 5 said, would Brand switch up on Kyle Pitts if he was a Patriot? No, he sucks.
And honestly, I think that would make you continue the turn, because if he's
oh
bad
my
in
God,
New
I
England,
can't watch him try to play for my team.
That's what I mean.
No.
Like, if he went to New England and was good, then, you'd turn on him. But
sure.
You wouldn't just turn on him because he's a Patriot.
It wouldn't be like, it's okay, buddy. You'll be great. No, fuck
No. I'll make it worse on him.
Alex with another $1.99 said, my 1-1 sleeper is Marvin Mims. Have I lost my mind?
I don't hate it, man.
No, not for a sleeper pick. Again, what he did last year, it was like he did it, and then we were all like, okay, that'll probably never happen again. And now he's playing starter snaps, and it's like, oh? So, no, I don't think that's a bad pick at all. Ren with $5 said, first pick flex. Sorry, big work gets in the way of the pod. 101 too early for Jameis Winston. No, I think that's the perfect spot
Ren. I think
for you to take Jameis Winston in our draft. I think that's perfect. Lucian with another 5, thanks, man, said, I'm banking on Chicago stink to have rubbed off. Also, AG, Steelers season, and Ohio State reunion with Garrett Wilson for Justin Fields.
True.
If
only Mason Taylor weren't there.
Fields. Yeah, very true. Mason Taylor's going for 2,000 yards. William with another 2 said, thanks, I'm a rookie to fantasy. I know nothing. Okay, hey, if you're completely new to fantasy, I guess I could see why you might not know where kickers go. Yeah, no, don't draft a kicker till super late because they're like the most unpredictable position possible, and they all basically do the same thing. So,
well, and here's the thing too, William, is that unless your kicker is the elite of the elite, you will be dropping them on their bye week. Right. So, the guy that you draft, actually, the guy I drafted last year, Kayumi Fairbairn, I rostered him all year, but again, he was the second best kicker in the league last year. So, unless you get one of the best guys, you're going to be dropping him anyway, so don't look too... Obviously, it matters, because you need every point to win, and kickers give you points. But, yeah, unless... I think I took mine in, the 14th in my draft I did, and even that felt a little early.
Yeah. Bailey with 199 said Steichen is the first
one.
I like that.
Shit!
That's another good call.
I knew I was forgetting somebody. I didn't even look at the Colts
Steichen.
on my list here.
That is a good shout.
That's a great shout, Bailey. Yeah.
And Alex with 499 said Jake Elliott is one of 2 Bengals draft picks to win the Super Bowl as a rookie. By the way, look at the Giants' schedule from September to October.
Giants schedule. Let's see. This should be funny. Oh my god. No, Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers. Oh dear. Saints. Okay, you. Eagles, Broncos, Eagles. Good lord. And then they have the 49ers. They're going to be 1-7. So I guess the Dable...
Bye, Brian.
I guess the Dable shout was good. I didn't even know that. I just figured that he's handsome. And I was at I was in Vegas with some of my friends this week, and the preseason game was on at the casino, and my friend, she goes, that guy kind of looks like you. I'm like, God damn it. I'm like, not all fat, bald guys with beards look the same.
That's so funny. I mean, yeah, I guess the Giants just drew the short straw of, every team in their own division is at least good or competitive now. I mean, the Cowboys are the other one that's but they're still going to light up the scoreboard on you. They drew They drew the Niners because they finished in the same place in the standings last year, which was last, which is hilarious. They're like, hey, here's your reward for being bad last year. You get to play another bad team, and it's the fucking 49ers. They're playing the NFC North just as an overall division, which is probably the most competitive division in the sport. So yeah, that's a pretty brutal just scheduled draw for them. Why are they playing the Chiefs? Oh, I guess they're playing the whole AFC West as well. Yeah, that's brutal. That is fucking brutal. All right. Oh, wait, we got one more donation. Odin, with $20, man. Thank you.
Oh, geez, Odin, thank you.
I can never hang out full time, but love you guys regardless. Could you rank going rounds for tight ends? What do you mean going rounds? And I'll let you clarify because that was a large donation. Yeah, what do you mean by going Are you saying like what rounds you should take a tight end?
Each guy in?
That's what it sounds like. Because if that's what you mean, like, I mean,
let's yap about that until he clarifies.
I mean, third round's my favorite for tight ends because that's where George Kittle goes, and he's the best value probably in fantasy football just in general. Other than that, like, I don't really love taking Bowers or McBride because they're going in the second, and I just don't like making that investment personally. And after that, like, as late as possible. Like, I maybe not as late as possible because those true high upside dart throw tight ends like Loveland and Warren, you probably got to spend like a 9th or 10th on. But I like going around there.
Trust me,
I'm sure they do.
Like I kind of waited. I forgot who I was targeting, and I kind of missed him. And then I'm like, all right, I'll wait. And then I missed out on those two. Yeah, I mean, you probably are going to need to, if you're going to want a guy that's not like a real dart throw, like I've got 4 of them on my team. Probably like by the 10th round. But I love Bowers. I love McBride. It's just going to put you in a weirder position to fill out the rest of your team if you use high capital on one of those guys. As much as I love quarterbacks, I'd rather take like Josh Allen early, even like that, honestly.
And it's like I can see worlds where those guys aren't like the tight end 1 or 2, and it like you need a guy to be like the most obvious slam dunk guy ever to take a tight end in the second round. And it's like, yes, Bowers was amazing. We saw Sam Laporta fall off in year 2. Not that Bowers is set up to even do the same thing because his supporting cast is so much different, but it's like, what if Dante Thornton's really good, Pat? And what if they just run the ball with Genty 4,000 times? And then in Arizona's case, like, what if Marvin Harrison Jr. is really good? And Trey McBride, takes more of a backseat. Unlikely sort of things.
I'll be honest here.
But enough to not take a tight end in that spot, personally.
I think that Brock Bowers could be hit by a nuclear missile and still be by far the
very
number 1
possible
target on the Raiders. He
very
could be
possible.
armless and he could be limbless out there and still dominating the touches.
I think that's fair. All right, we're going to call it there for the show this week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, we'll be back here next week trying to lead you guys all to your fantasy
three more podcasts until kickoff, man.
The Our Boys, Our Guys, Brand's Boys, Pat's Pals episode is coming soon. We got to decide who we're planting our fucking flag in. So it's going to be a fun one, but we got plenty of good shows coming up. For Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon
in the
Conner,
dark.
and we'll
Can't
see you
even
guys
see me waving goodbye
next time. Adios.